I've never told anyone this story, not because I don't want to, but because I don't know if anyone would believe me, or if they'd still look at me the same if they did. My family has secrets, deep, dark secrets that I stumbled upon when I was 16. Secrets I wish I could forget. It started with the attic. We lived in a large old house, the kind with creaky floorboards and doors that didn't close all the way. My parents always told me never to go into the attic. The rule wasn't negotiable. They were dead serious about it, so I didn't ask why. But when you're a teenager, being told not to do something just makes you want to do it more. One summer night, when my parents were out and my little sister was asleep, I decided to see what the big deal was. The attic door was in the hallway, a heavy wooden thing with a metal latch. Normally it was locked, but that night, for the first time I'd ever seen, the lock was missing. I told myself it was fate. I pulled the door open, expecting a rush of stale air and maybe a few cobwebs. What I didn't expect was the smell. Thick, cloying, and metallic, like rust and spoiled meat. I gagged but pushed on, climbing the ladder into the darkness. The attic was pitch black. I flicked on my flashlight, and the beam cut through the dust-choked air, illuminating stacks of old boxes, broken furniture, and something else. At first I thought it was just an old trunk in the corner, but as I got closer, I realized it wasn't a trunk at all. It was a cage, a small, rusted iron cage, barely big enough to hold a child. The metal bars were bent in places, and the bottom was stained dark with something I didn't want to think about. My heart started pounding in my chest, but I told myself it was just an old relic from a bygone era. My family had owned the house for generations after all. Maybe it was used for trapping animals or something, but then I saw the scratches. Deep, jagged gouges in the wooden beams surrounding the cage, like someone, or something, had clawed at them desperately, trying to get out. I ran my fingers over the marks, feeling the splinters. They weren't old, they were fresh, and that's when I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping sound coming from behind me. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. Slowly, I turned my flashlight toward the sound. There was nothing there. I stood there, paralyzed, straining to hear anything over the sound of my own breathing. Then from somewhere deep in the shadows, I heard a voice. Help me. It was small and thin, like a child's voice, but hollow and cracked, as though it hadn't been used in years. The beam of my flashlight shook as I swung it toward the source. In the far corner of the attic, half hidden behind a pile of boxes, something moved. It wasn't human. It was crouched low to the ground, its limbs impossibly long and thin, its skin pale and stretched tight over its bones. It turned its head to look at me, and its eyes, God, its eyes were black pits, bottomless and wet, like oil. Its mouth opened, revealing jagged teeth, and it smiled. I don't remember running back down the ladder. I don't remember locking the attic door. All I remember is sitting in the hallway, shaking, until my parents came home hours later. When I told them what I'd seen, their faces went pale. My dad grabbed my arm, hard enough to bruise, and said, "You didn't let it out, did you?" That's when I realized they knew. They'd always known. They locked the attic door the next morning and refused to talk about it again. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. The tapping, the scratching, the voice whispering my name. The attic door is still there, but the lock, it's just for show. Whatever's inside doesn't need a key. It's just waiting.